and come in.
You connected?
Yeah, I just had to restart the computer. I think I'm good now.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, I see you live.
All right, I got to share my screen.
I see board book it.
And I'll let you go in just a minute. I'm going to get on the board meeting, get on the meeting now. If I do that and nothing crashes, I'm probably in good shape. And I can. Neil wants to know if I'm restarting a Commodore 64. So everyone wants me at once. I'm just going to call in a minute here. Hey, I think I'm back. Hey, Matt, I think I'm going to hang up now. I think I'm good. I got to. Hello.
Nice. Sounds good.
All right. Thanks, Matt. I'll call you if I need you. Thanks. Hey, can you guys hear me? Can you hear me? Can't hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Oh, okay. All right. For some reason, my camera isn't coming through, I guess, but we should be live on YouTube right now. If you guys are monitoring the YouTube channel, you should see the board agenda.
Okay. Well, if there's nothing else, I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order.
I'm sorry, Neil. Yeah, go ahead.
At 4:41 p.m. Wednesday, June 3rd, 2020. We are still continuing in the online format and phone format. So we'll go ahead and jump in here. Let the record reflect that the meeting button appropriately advertised and that all board members are present other than Dan Lamar tonight. So jump on to the first item here, which is approval of the minutes. And I believe the date is the April 22nd minutes that still need to be approved.
Oh, excuse me. I think we're on the working session, aren't we?
I'm sorry. Yes, let's jump right to COTSA then on the working session.
Yeah, working sessions first.
Yeah, I was looking at the meeting agenda. Sorry. So let me just pull the working session up, and we just have one item, right?
Yeah, it's Costa. He's going to talk about MDM, or mobile device management. And I have a picture for you on YouTube that's a little humorous if you get a chance to look at it. Costa can explain what it is.
Yeah, sorry about that. Costa, go ahead. We'll start with you.
All right, gentlemen. Well, thanks for giving me some of your time. Essentially, what I wanted to discuss was mobile device management. As you guys probably know, cell phones have evolved quite a bit over the past 10 years, and they're no longer used for just dialing numbers. We can do all sorts of things like read email. We can connect back to our utilities network here. We can even control computers and devices like SCADA systems directly from our cell phones without having to physically go into the office. And as you guys probably know, that's a huge advantage for utilities employees if they get an emergency call, being able to respond right away without having to go into the office. So traditionally, computers, we have a system called Microsoft Active Directory, and it allows us to centrally manage computers and put policies on them to make sure that they have the right passwords, among other things. Mobile devices can't be managed in that same manner, so we need a different tool called mobile device management. Broadly, they're called mobile device management tools, and those are what we would like to use to make sure that the utilities devices are secure moving forward. So I'm pulling up some of my talking points here. And again, mobile device management, MDM for short is what we'll call it, has some benefits like security. Utilities employees can check email. We talked about SCADA systems being able to be accessed from cell phones potentially. Mobile device management also makes us more efficient. If we have changes that we need to implement in our organization, like changing Wi-Fi passwords, changing email settings, we're able to do that across the organization without touching every single device. Apps can be installed remotely. Deployment of new or replacement devices is more efficient because a user is able to power on a phone and get going right away without having us hold on to the phone and transfer certain pieces of information. Also important is licensing. As you know, computers, software costs money, and having mobile device management will allow us to properly manage those licenses. The way that it's currently set up is anybody that has a phone essentially has a consumer account on it. And if we buy a license for that account and that employee leaves, that license goes with it. Mobile device management will allow us to take the license from one Apple account and move it to another, or one Android account and move it to another. Asset management is another big part about it. It'll help us track assets better. And most importantly, like its picture, is that it helps avoids Apple devices turning into doorstops. With those consumer accounts, without the end user voluntarily unlocking the device, we can't unlock it, not by calling Apple or anything else that we can do on our end. The only way is to have it set up initially properly through a mobile device management solution. So our solution that we plan to use is a combination of Apple Business Manager, which is free, that helps us manage our Apple identities on an organizational level. And the product that we picked to supplement that is Manage Engine is the name of the company. And the approximate price of that is around $18 per device per year for Apple and Android devices. And there's essentially kind of two pieces to complete the puzzle. One being for the Apple ID portion and the other one for like policy and security portion. And our idea to roll this out is kind of in a staged approach where we would be doing each department individually. And that would also kind of allow us to sort of test the process and adjustments before rolling out to our more important departments that may cause more disruption, like finance or things of that nature.
Actually, this is Aaron. What utility employees do not have a cell phone?
That's a good question. I don't believe any sort of like customer service representatives have cell phones, but most and Greeno and Ryan, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think most of the field employees have devices. Anybody that's kind of out in the field, so a lot of there's on-call devices as well. So. We do have them commonly deployed at water, wastewater, electric, finance, administration as well.
About how many total devices do we have?
I actually have a bill here. So we have a mix of actual cell phones and other devices that use cellular data, but they're not actually cell phones, kind of like I think most commonly out at Sugar Creek out in the field. We have a few devices that talk directly. Also, the metering department has a few laptops that talk to Verizon as well. But just looking at this list, rough estimate, I would say about 60 to 80 devices.
Thank you. This is Jim Irvin. What is the total cost of this program? It was $18 per unit. That's not the total cost?
Well, not all of the devices on this list would be managed. Out of the devices on here, I would approximate about 40 to 50 would be managed under this program. So let me do some quick calculations.
Maybe under 1,000 a year.
Mm-hmm. And I will say that this is something that we've had a line item for in the past. So I believe it's actually already a budgeted item. But I'd have to check with finance about that, if that's something that we're actually adding, or if it's something that we already had on the budget, which I believe we do, and now we're just kind of in the implementation phase. And we wanted to kind of bring it to your guys' attention and let you know why we're implementing MDM. Because there are, I would say one of the major drawbacks of us implementing this program is that some employees might be used to having personal Apple IDs on Apple devices. And unfortunately, we won't be able to have a corporately managed Apple ID and a personal Apple ID on the device at the same time. And, you know, we want to explain to you guys the benefits of us using mobile device management and a corporate Apple account versus a personal Apple account that could potentially lock us out of a device and force us to turn it into a doorstop or a paperweight. But just to do the quick math, 50 times 18, $900 a year approximately.
Hey, this is Neil. I just have a couple questions too. This mobile device management, it's only going to be installed on utility-owned devices, right?
Correct. If it is a personal device, we would not want to manage it in this manner. And our policy doesn't say that you can't use a corporate device for personal use, like you can make personal calls and personal texts. And from my standpoint, I don't have a problem with that, especially since the utilities Verizon plan is unlimited minutes, unlimited data. So it's not like, costing us money by any means. But we do want to have the mindset of business device first, personal device second, making sure that we can enforce a screen lock policy, or potentially make changes if our environment changes, changing Wi-Fi passwords without having to touch each one of the devices.
Oh, this is Ed. Let me add on to that. This is a cybersecurity initiative. We just want to make sure that the phones are safe, because we got talking about this because I want to make sure everybody's phone was locked. So if they laid the phone down someplace and someone else picked it up, they couldn't get into our network. Whereas right now we can't really assure that. And if there's a problem with the phone, we can't really fix it or help with it because we can't get into it because of the Apple ID password. So this is just part of the cybersecurity stuff that Costa and Zeph both came and talked to us about a few months back. Is that right, Costa? Is that about cover it on that?
Yeah, I'd say that's accurate.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that anybody, once we install this, anybody who has a company device understands that, this is a monitored device now, and anything that they do on it can be monitored. We don't want anybody to be blindsided and maybe send something that, and not saying that the utility is actively monitoring text or apps or activities, but they need to be aware that the capability is certainly there.
Yeah, we're not looking to be Big Brother. I don't think we have time to be Big Brother if we wanted to, but I like the fact that people use the phone somewhat for personal use, because that means if they have the phone with them, if I need them, I could call them. So there's actually a benefit to the utility to allow personal use, because it doesn't cost us anything. But if we need to call them, we need help, we need to team up with them on something, and they're not scheduled to work, we can get that 5-minute answer that can really be a force multiplier and really save us a lot of hassle.
Yeah, I agree.
This is Bill. I think that, we just need a company policy that outlines that. And I will add that most companies today have their own dedicated cell phone, and then the employee has their personal phone. I'm not sure it's a good idea to have both of them together.
Hey, Bill, I don't totally disagree, but I can tell you that very few people will tolerate carrying 2 cell phones around all the time. It's just too inconvenient.
Yeah.
Right. Well, then that's what they'll do is they'll just have their personal phone then.
Costa, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. Did the city go on this program?
They are going on it as well. We're doing them basically at the same time. We just aren't as far along on the process because they don't have as many technical resources as you guys do.
Okay, and I guess it's my understanding from what I hear, yes, you'll be able to read all texts, even our personal ones, because, for the past 20 years, we have been able to use these for personal use. And the IRS allows that you guys will have access to all of our pictures, our location 100% of the time, or the location of the phone. Is that correct?
Yeah, we could potentially read anything on the device, just like your work computer, right? If you have a work computer and you're storing stuff on it, we're trying to treat the cell phones just like a work computer. We don't mind if on a work computer you do some online banking or something like that, but just know whenever you're on a company device, you could potentially be monitored.
Right, but the computer always sits in the office, so it's not really tracking location. So if people do choose, as I'm not sure if it was Bill or Neil, to carry their own personal cell phone, will email be allowed on that phone, or is that a no? Email's just allowed on company phones.
That's another conversation that we can have. I would be leaning towards no email on personal devices, but you know, that's something that we can cross that bridge when we get to it. I would say email's a little bit less sensitive, but you know, if we're thinking security first, then no, email shouldn't be allowed on personal devices, only company-owned devices.
Yeah, that
Okay,
was kind of Neil again. Yeah, that was, if we're gonna do it for security purposes, I don't know how we can let email be on personal phones, but I just want to make sure, because I've seen how these work before. I think having a phone is a great perk, and personally, if we have unlimited everything, it's not costing us more for associates to use that phone. But they do need to be aware of the, you know, monitoring that could take place that may not be actively being done. And if they choose to carry a personal phone, you know, obviously that's their right to do. And the only problem, Bill, with telling an employee that they're going to use their personal phone is then, you know, they're paying for the line, and if you're calling them after hours, it's hard to enforce answering your personal phone after hours if they're not paying for it, things like that.
Well, they won't, then they just, you know, they'll have their, you'll have, I think you'll have a problem getting a hold of them. Unless you want to just have everybody just has a company phone, a utility phone.
So that was my point. I think everybody who currently has a phone, a company phone, should keep that phone. But you know, if they choose to carry a personal phone, that's their choice. We would still call the work phone number after hours for all business, and they would be expected to answer it like they normally would be. But I don't think taking it away and saying use your personal phone if you don't like the rules, I don't think that works very well. But anyway, we're probably getting too far into it. I think
That's what I think. I think it needs. I think you need to talk about it, because I mean, I'll tell you. I mean, I have a personal phone now that I have. I have my personal email, and then I also have the city email on it. So, Costa,
Right.
what are you saying? That we shouldn't do that?
Well, like I said, it's a little bit different for email, and I'm personally a little bit more lax if we're talking about just email. But some phones have the ability to connect back to our network, and especially like the management portion of it. Remember earlier I was talking about there's Apple Business Manager and our MDM piece that actually costs money.
Yeah.
The MDM piece is where we would enforce policies like password policies and whatnot. And the Apple Business Manager is where we could say, okay, this is a corporate Apple ID account. So I guess I'm getting too far into it. To answer your question, for board members, I would be fine with just email going on personal devices. But we would want to make sure that all of the board members at least have like a password on their phone. We couldn't really enforce it at that point. So I guess that's kind of a tougher question that I'm not really too prepared.
Yeah, well, Costa, let me interrupt you. I think that email shouldn't be on personal phones if we have them, just because we can't control that the phone's locked. But that's a board decision, a policy decision. I can't tell board members what to do. I don't want to, and you guys shouldn't listen anyway, I guess. But as far as employees go, we want the whole reason we're pushing MDM. We want to make sure that get into company apps and company stuff. Yeah, that we can verify the phone's locked, because it's not so much the severity, how many characters are in the password. Most devices are hacked just by based on it being unlocked, and we're trying to get past that aspect of it. And as far as changes policies on the phone use and carrying 2 phones. That really today we were prepared. Well, we can talk about that and schedule for a future working session, because it was just prepared to talk about mobile device management and go from there. So,
Yeah, this is a good idea.
That's good.
And the cost for that many devices over 1 year is pretty reasonable.
Right.
Yeah,
Anything
you
else?
know, we have $1,500 worth of door stops just from one employee in the past, year. Admittedly, we don't very often have a termination where we can't get the employee to unlock the device, but we have had that issue recently, unfortunately.
yeah, and one issue we may have to tackle that is some people have privacy is an issue where some people have a lot of concerns about it. It's a very emotional issue, and some people like me, I'm not very concerned about the privacy, because there's really not who has time to really look at all my pictures. You know what I mean? It's like, and it's one of those things. So, but it's a personal issue, so we might want to consider a policy where instead of giving somebody a company phone, we do a stipend for the phone, which I think Sandy Corporate does that, and you guys could give us a policy to copy on that. I generally am not in favor of those, but if that's something that we need to do to accommodate people, we could talk about it.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions about the MDM?
No.
And this is Larry, I do have a question. This is not on a regular agenda, so is this something that's the budgeted item that falls within the budget parameters of the general manager without board approval?
Yes, it's just $900. We just want to bring it up for discussion before we implemented it, because frankly, there's going to be some employees, whenever you do anything that touches employees and policies and things like that, we like to keep the board informed before we do it, because you might get a phone call about it or something.
With that understanding, as a board member, I would like to see a written policy that lays out the changes that we're discussing now.
Yep, I agree. I think that our mobile device policy, that's sort of the employee handbook from way back in the day, is a little bit dated, and I don't think it addressed some of the points that we're talking about today. So I agree. I think we'll work on a mobile device policy and then put that in front of you guys and for approval, as long as, Ed, does that sound good to you, I assume?
Yeah, Seth has been working on that for a long time, and he has given me some stuff, and we are working on, the employee handbook update that we're going to roll that into. So yeah, you get with Seth later, and we'll talk about it in one of our regular IT review meetings, because we have meetings, regular scheduled meetings about every 2 weeks where we sit down and talk about this stuff. So thanks, Costa.
All right, are there any other questions for me?
I don't think so.
All right, well, I appreciate everybody's time, and I hope you guys have a good rest of your meeting.
Thank you very much for the info.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Costa. Oh, I had one more thing before we roll into the regular meeting. This is just a little thing to some people, big thing to me. Is I on YouTube channel, I have the American flag up. I was thinking we could say the pledge again and just look at the flag on YouTube, if that's okay with everyone, because we haven't said it in months now with COVID. So
Yeah, so we'll do that, since I've kind of already called the meeting to order. Confirmed that all board members are present. Dan Lamar is the only board member not present tonight. Meeting was appropriately notified, and so we can go ahead with the pledge of allegiance.
okay, pledge
Allegiance to the flag
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay.
All right.
We will, as I said earlier, I think the first item here is the approval of minutes from the April 22nd, 2020 meeting. According to the agenda, we have any other minutes that need to be approved in addition to these, or will this cover everything?
that covers everything. They've been approved before every meeting we've had.
Okay, so everybody had a chance to review those minutes. Are there any questions on the minutes on the April 22nd minutes?
No,
All right.
This is Aaron. I'll make
Go ahead.
this is Aaron. I'll make a motion that the minutes be approved as written.
this is Bill, I second.
Motion made by Aaron, seconded by Bill to approve the minutes from April 22nd, 2020 meeting. Any other discussion on the minutes? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, those minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda is the electric capital improvement project and lighting study. It's an action item, and our electric operations manager, Jeff Reno, is going to explain this item for us. Thanks, Jeff.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. The electric department, in conjunction with Butler, Fairman, and Seifert, would like the board to approve a short-range capital improvement project and a lighting study to assist the city with potential projects at Memorial Park and along Meridian Street and East Streets. The identification of CIP projects will allow the electric department to prioritize projects based on need, the hazard ranking, timing, and funding available. The lighting study will enable the department to assist the city with their concerns on lighting the city to protect our citizens. So I would like to request the board approve the study as proposed by BF&S to identify and prioritize potential projects for the electric department and to conduct a lighting study to assist the city in projects it has for the Memorial Park and limited sections of Meridian and East Streets for a not to exceed amount of $34,000.
Okay.
See, this is Aaron. See, this is Aaron. And a few weeks ago, I asked Sandra Morgan how this would be paid for. And this will be paid from the electric utility contractual services other budget line. And the total budgeted amount for the year may be exceeded because this new project was not anticipated at the time the budget was prepared. So I just wanted to point that out, that this might be end up being a modest additional request. I'm not saying I oppose it in any way. I'm just pointing that out.
Yep, that's a good point, Aaron. Hey, John Leitner, you're still on, right?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any comment on this? I see the not to exceed amount of 34,000. Would this be the utilities only cost? Would it be a partial cost of 34,000? And then once the study is done, utilities have any future costs on this additional lighting, of this new lighting project?
Yeah, so the lighting portion of it is actually about $10,000 of the $34,000. So as we've talked with the city, basically it was we had a coordination meeting with Ed. You know, that there was some discussions on the Light the Night program that the city is implementing. I think we had some concerns that we might have whether utilities might be participating extensively in that. After our meetings, what we kind of came through is Lebanon Utilities as kind of being a joint partner could help with this lighting study, where the city could then utilize what comes out of the study to create future projects and actually implement things throughout the city.
Okay, so sounds like our cost may be under the 34,000 if it's closer to 10, which might keep us either in or closer to budget.
Well, I want to point out that So the lighting study is one component. There's an electric capital improvement plan for Lebanon utilities. It's 24,000, and then the lighting study is 10,000.
All right,
Okay.
so that gets it to 34.
Correct. The lighting or the electric capital improvements plan, that's, so the capital improvements plan programs are things we've done for water and wastewater, with a lot of success, at least, especially on the water side. Basically what we're gonna do is do that same type of hazard ranking that we've come back to the board with on the water and wastewater projects, see what our biggest issues are throughout the city, as far as the electric side, and then also look at some future projects and how we can accommodate some growth as well as fix, but our number one priority being fix what if there are any issues. So it just helps a lot with budgeting. I know Ryan Adjourn can probably speak to that. You know, budgeting, future planning on the water side has gone a lot smoother since we implemented a capital improvements plan. So just looking to do the same thing for the electric department.
Yeah, John, this is Jim Urban. I have a question. Dan Lamar and I were both concerned about the wording capital improvements project, because I think at the start of this pandemic, did we decide at the utility board not to enter into any capital improvements until everything settled down? I could be wrong, but I had that thought in my mind that we said that was going to happen.
This is Bill. I think we talked about any major capital improvement.
And again, this is John Leitner. I would say that this is actually planning for future capital improvements. So it's setting up to be able to do things in the future. It's not necessarily committing to do a large capital project.
That's right.
Jim, this is Ryan. I will say that in the meetings we've had with the city planners and the mayor and everybody involved, I'm speaking for the water side. The capital improvement plan has been a major asset. We were even able to show them a 5 and 6 year plan where they are going to try to tie some road projects into us already having the area to put in a water main. So it's been very instrumental in good cooperation between us and the city and the future planning as far as the corridor, the walking trail, all the upgrades and improvements that the city's doing. We have both sides have benefited from our capital improvement plan.
Thanks, Ryan. I think I'd agree with that. I think it's really a no-brainer. I mean, it's just smart planning and good teamwork between us and the city. So I'm glad you chimed in. Okay. Any other questions on the lighting study for Jeff or John or anyone else on the line?
No, this is Bill. I agree with it. I think it's a good program, good plan, especially since the utilities does not have an electrical engineer. I think by using BF&S, it makes good sense.
Yeah, this is Ed. I need to add on to that BF&S isn't electrical engineer, but capital planning is mostly a civil engineering function as far as planning where growth is going to be, growth corridors and easement corridors, and they're working with an electrical engineer for the electrical side of it as far as costing and how the the substations and wiring aspects of it go.
So this is Aaron. The BF&S, from what little research I've done, the electrical consultant that they're going to rely on seems to be very good. So what expertise that BF&S doesn't have from the electrical side, it looks like they're made a good attempt to tap into that expertise through, I guess, would sort of amount to a subcontractor. So
Right.
Okay, good discussion. Anything else on the lighting study for Jeff or John, or before we, this is an action item, so we'll need some motions here.
This is Bill. I make a motion to approve the study as proposed by BF&S to identify and prioritize potential projects for the electrical department and to conduct a lighting study to assist the city with potential projects it has for Memorial Park along Meridian Street from Ewan Drive to Washington Street and along East Street from Ewan Drive to Washington Street for a not to exceed amount of $34,000.
This is Aaron, a second.
Motion made by Bill, seconded by Aaron to approve the study, as proposed by BF&S for the, capital improvement project and lighting study. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Jeff Greeno and John.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, next item is the IURC order. It's an action item, and we're going to lean on Jeff Jacobs here, our legal counsel, to provide information on this. Hey, Jeff.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let me first, before I jump into this, Sandra just sent me a note, and I'm trying to research here literally on the fly between agenda items that it looks like the governor just approved a $17 million funding through the CARES Act for low-income energy assistance. So any Hoosier who lost their jobs, saw their hours significantly reduced due to COVID, may be eligible for a one-time benefit of $350 to assist in their utility bill. And that looks like a program that has been rolled out in the last just hour or so, which dovetails into our discussion. Let me begin by saying that Sandra, thank you for that finding that update. The Indiana Regulatory Commission has taken some steps in the last couple of weeks, and a lot of this stuff is on a pretty tight timetable. And so I'll go through this with a kind of a high level and throw some detail out at you. And if you please stop me, or if you want to talk after the meeting, I'm happy to discuss. My intent here is to present to you what information I have, and then let the board make a decision, obviously, as to what steps, if any, it wants to take. By way of background, there are two cases that were recently filed before the Indiana Regulatory Commission. And one was filed by investor-owned utilities or IOUs. And what they were requesting in their filing to the IURC is a permission to seek an operating cost offset due to COVID-19 and the governor's emergency order. And what they're saying in this filing is that they have sustained increased labor costs, employee quarantine-related costs, overtime, cleaning supply costs, PPE costs, health screening costs, none of which were contemplated pre-COVID-19. Additionally, they have had significant revenue issues in that they have, through the IOUs are mainly referencing their commercial users here, but because businesses have gone under, those users have not paid their bills, and they are not going to have the usage that they normally had as they contemplated in their rates. So what they're asking
to be able to do is to pass that cost on to their ongoing customers. The second part of the IOU filing is they're requesting a deferred accounting. And if you'll recall back to our rate cases, this is a two-pronged element here. In a rate case, what we do is we look back for typically 1 year to what operating costs have been, rates, expenses, and analyze what that rate should be in the next year. What change should occur. A deferred accounting will be the IURC's approval to take COVID issues, and if we have a rate increase, a rate case in 3 years or 4 years, to pull those expenses into a rate increase request. Additionally, they're seeking direction on how to, from the IURC, on how utilities should capture that data and report it for the purposes of a deferred account. So that filing happened contemporaneously with the filing from the OUCC, or Offices of Utility Consumer Counselor. And many of you are familiar with that entity from our electric rate case, but they are a consumer protection type entity, and they have made a filing with the IURC under a separate cause number, requesting that that disconnects be stayed indefinitely. And as many of you are familiar with the governor's order, or one of his executive orders, that element of the order expires at the end of the month. They are also requesting that all fees related to the governor's staying of disconnects be waived. And that is actually even expanded to include issues like requiring deposits. So, if someone were disconnected or they had to
Hey, Jeff.
Yes.
This is Aaron. The language of the clause here from the OUCC doesn't say to extend the disconnects indefinitely. The way I read it, it asks the commission to extend the disconnect policy, but it doesn't say to what date it should be extended.
Yeah, so that's a great point, Aaron. And I guess I use the term indefinitely is there's no date certain requested.
Right,
So,
right. I think the OUCC is leaving it up to the commission to decide what's good public policy.
Yeah, so it means the same thing, Aaron.
So yeah, I don't mean to imply that it's forever, but it's a date, no date certain has been requested. So in what I would say an indefinite or indeterminate date.
Period of time, yes.
Yeah. So what's going to be interesting as we look into that point is from a lawyer's perspective, and I will cut myself off here. I will self-regulate, but what's going to be interesting is the interplay between a governor's executive order and IURC authority. But that's something that will be discussed and litigated. So the OUCC is also asking for the expansion of pay agreements. So what the IURC then did with those two filings is that they merged them into one case. And you can argue whether or not that was a smart play or not. Many from the municipally owned utility standpoint and in the would argue that it was not. And that it's muddied the waters between two different types of utilities. So what the IURC did in this merger order was said, listen, we want to gather data, and we're going to create two different phases. One is going to be, we're going to consider disconnects and fee waivers and pay agreements. And anybody that's interested, you need to submit information by June 10th. And the urgency being the end of the month and the expiration of the governor's order. And the second element of that is we encourage you to start recording data, and we're going to discuss. We want to know what your thoughts are on a regulatory accounting framework. So the second phase of the IURC order is really a fiscal impact analysis, and that's going to be a larger discussion and more data that would be supplied. And they're talking about mid-July dates for assembly of information. So that IURC order recently came out, and the reaction was that the IOUs they're already engaged, and they will respond accordingly. The OUCC is obviously already engaged, and they will respond accordingly. And there is a group of MOUs, or municipally owned utilities, and conservancy districts that have formed a coalition. Right now it's sitting at 11 participants. Of note, we've got Fort Wayne City Utilities, Richmond Power and Light, Crawfordsville Electric Power and Light, Gibson Water, Michigan City Water Department, Boonville Utilities, to name most of them.
So are these all IMPA customers?
No, several of them are water, and Crawfordsville is, I believe Crawfordsville and Fort Wayne are IMPA. I don't know about, I believe Richmond, so I think I see 3 on there. Now, I don't know about Fort Wayne, I'm overspeaking. Richmond and Crawfordsville, I believe, are IMPA. Ed, you may be able to, to correct me.
Yeah, this is Ed. I haven't seen the whole list, but I am showing on the YouTube screen an email from IMPA where the opinion being expressed by some of these other attorneys is that the IRC is intending for us to intervene if we feel like we should. So because we might lose our opportunity to recover losses from COVID-19 if we don't do it now. So it's up there for you to, I could read it.
So in any event, so these, there may be others that are jumping in, but right now there's an attorney at Bose that is representing those 11 entities, and has requested additional entities, and at the suggestion of IMPA, that additional entities jump on board. So that group of 11 MOUs in conservancy districts, but the MOUs are taking the position, and what they're trying to do is to intervene in the case. And they're basically saying, hey, wait a minute, we're different. What about us? We want to make sure that we're heard. So those, and part of why we're different than IOUs is that that the IURC has approved for IOUs a return on equity for the IOUs. In other words, they're able to run a profit, and they are investor backed. So they, at times, the theory is that they have a little deeper reserves than potentially an MOU might. We are, in theory, supposed to not, the concept is that we don't make a profit. We don't bank funds except for capital improvement. And Sandra may correct me, there may be some additional items that we can have cash reserves for, but that's, in theory, a very rudimentary description of the concept. So what the MOU 11 are asking is for the IURC to recognize that MOUs are not public utilities, but they're a different entity. And they are saying that we are in a better position than the IURC to levy rules on how we would manage pay agreements, on how we would manage our fees, how we would manage disconnects. Disconnects is strong, but that the implication is we're in a better spot to understand our customer base than a broad brush rule passed by the IURC that would also cover IOUs. So this is all, as mentioned, this has all happened very quickly. I am frankly not sure this was rolled out mid last week. I don't know that we've actually formally been notified by the IURC of this order. And we received it through third-party channels, and we've kind of been monitoring these issues. Be that as it may, we have a quick decision that we need to make.
Well, this is Aaron, Jeff. Ed, you and I had an interesting discussion about how the IOU action will impact IMPA. Would you share that?
Yes, Aaron, I'd be happy to. What may happen is if the IOU or the investor-owned utility can recover costs in their rates, and they might raise their rate, and IMPA, or the Indiana Municipal Power Association, is a customer of Duke and the IOUs. So that would mean they would raise their rate to IMPA, and IMPA would in turn raise their rate to us for our purchase power. So which would raise the rate on our customers. It would end up being that our customers would be sponsoring the profit that Duke is making, and they're doing this rate case to preserve their profit. And I'm not against Duke making a profit. I think they should make a profit. They're investor owned, but I think that everyone should bear some of the pain and suffering from COVID. It should be spread. There should be stimulus to affect everyone. But the way this legislation, or this, I guess, IURC order is written, it looks like it benefits the IOUs at the expense of the public-owned utilities.
So what the option that's being presented by Ed and I to the board is to join in the 11, and I would gather there may be a few others that have jumped on, or there may be other filings. There may be other groups that seek to intervene. But the thought process is to present to you this option, and let me go through the pros with you as I see them. I'm sure that there are others, and then present some cons, and I'm sure there's some that I'm missing. But the first pro to joining this group is to influence the decision. It's to have an opportunity and a seat at the table, and have access and a voice in front of the IURC to say, look, we agree, we disagree with this, collectively as part of this group. Now, a con to that is, well, there's going to be cost with that. And the attorney that I've spoken to that handles regulatory issues and is handling the 11 has quoted a price of a cap of $5,000 to handle the phase one and to make that filing on behalf of Lebanon Utilities, it's simply more economical to coattail and jump into this group than not. And to say nothing of this firm that having more regulatory experience than my firm. So the other pro to this is that it's a vehicle. This is a vehicle for us to supply data and to show the IURC, which they're seemingly requesting. And there's a pretty extensive list in their order of stuff that they want to see. And we are flat out not going to be able to provide it all. Some of it we track, some of it we don't. But this would be a vehicle for us to supply that information. The downside is that it's staff and attorney time putting that information together. And it's going to be no small burden on Sandra to put some of this information together in advance of June 10th, and then that July 15th date. It's not an easy task. Now, here is one that I have, in talking to others in the industry, that I throw out there, and you can take this for what it's worth, because I think there's a little bit of crystal ball to this. The suggestion as to why we should intervene and why MOUs and IOUs, for that matter, should be involved in this is to be able to speak up, let the IURC hear and see your data, because if there is a need for relief in the future, meaning we have to go back to our request to the IURC some point in the future for some sort of rate adjustment or the like, that we will more loudly be heard and recognized because we have spoken up in this case. Take that for what it's worth. That makes some sense to me. The other side of the coin is, yeah, let's let somebody else carry the water and speak up, and we hope that, and it may likely be the case that one MOU, Crawfordsville, who's joined, for example, may simply have the same interests as we do, and we can let them pay the legal fees to argue the overall case. So that's kind of where I come off on this in terms of, those are my analysis of the pros and cons. I would be happy to go into the intervening motion that's already on file that I'm presenting an option to join. And this is for just phase one. And this is a policy influencing request. This is not a rate request, a rate adjustment request in front of the IURC. And I'm happy to talk about the OUCC filing or the IOU filing, or walk through kind of my further analysis on pros and cons. But absent that's kind of what my thoughts are, and I would be happy to answer any questions and welcome input from the board on what, if anything, we should do with this.
This is Aaron. Sandra, are you on the line?
Yeah.
Sandra, are you on the line?
Yes.
Do you have an opinion that you're comfortable expressing regarding this?
I'm okay with Jeff's recommendation. It's going to be fairly difficult for us to get all the data together that they're requesting. We think we can get most of it, but there might be some things that just takes a little bit longer, and I think they have to be understanding on that part.
Thank you.
So one of the things Ed and I and Sandra have been kind of discussing is, and maybe Ed, I think Ed may have some of this data that we hinted to as he was jumping on the call during the working session. What have we seen from a financial impact on relative to disconnects during the COVID period since the governor's order ceasing disconnects to now?
Hi, this is Ed. I can go through some of that now. I was going to do it in other business later, but seeing how it's relevant, let me skip ahead to that. I'm sharing my screen on YouTube, and let me give it just a couple seconds to catch up here. It usually takes a minute. I'm monitoring on my phone. Okay, I guess highlights are we have 596 accounts on disconnect list that are 2.5 months overdue. Uncollected expenses are up to 1.3% of revenue, which isn't like killing us or anything, but normal range is of uncollected expenses is 0 to about 0.4%. The revenues are down with COVID, with businesses being scaled back or closed, but expenses are down more, partly due to our austerity measures, not doing capital, delaying capital improvements, but expenses are down more than revenues. And revenues, these revenues that I'm showing, they're not recognized. They're recognized as if the disconnects were being paid. So the revenues you're seeing might be as much as 1.3% lower. So I'm going to take you through some graphs and tables here. This is a cash collections graph, January 2018 to date. Blue is 2018, red is 2019, and green is 2020. So you can see why the green is only up to date through May, because hasn't happened yet. But I'll give you a chance to take that in, and you can see that cash collections are down. And
it was sort of interesting to me that May held up. The green line 2020 in May sort of held up. That sort of surprised me when you looked at April. So just making a comment.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. Sandra, do you have a comment on that, or?
Well, my only comment on that is normally May is going to be, a little bit less than the other months because people have turned off their heater, not turned on their air conditioner yet. But the reality is we have a 5-year rate increase with water right now, so our cash should be up. If you notice, the green line is above 2018 and 19 in January, February, and March, and then in April it starts going down from last year. So, you have a little bit of a combination of weather there plus the less cash collections, which I think you'll see on a slide here in a minute with the disconnect.
Okay, and the next slide might give it more context. This is the disconnect amount. Notice that's in thousands of dollars, and the prior slide was in millions of dollars. So in terms of scale, it's about 100 times less. But
are those green lines cumulative or just for that month?
They are cumulative. No, Sandra, are they just for?
It's just for that month. We normally collect right around $2.5 to $3 million a month.
So if you wanted year to date, you have to add those green lines together?
Yeah, if we wanted to do a cumulative year to date, we could put a graph together for that if you'd like to see it.
But that is correct, though. You'd add that for May, you'd add that 186,000 to 140,000 for April and so forth.
I'm sorry, hang on. So I'm still looking at the cash collection sheet. I think my sheet's frozen here. If you're on the disconnect sheet, that's cumulative.
Okay, so good.
Yeah, I was going to say good. That's the way I viewed it. So.
That May green line is here today.
Yeah. So what happens? Yeah. If I'm behind, so let's say I don't pay my bill in April, and I'm behind $400. If I don't pay it again in May, now I'm behind $800. So your May number includes your April number. So that is a
Okay.
cumulative total. We've gone
Thank you
from
very much.
it's significantly higher. I'm sitting in a parking lot, so I do apologize if I'm cutting in and out. I can't see anything. We've gone from on average around 20 to 30,000 in disconnects to like $180,000.
Okay, well, I have a slide further on that could maybe shed more light on it here. So let me just, this disconnect amount as a percent of year-to-date revenue, because as Sandra covered, the disconnects are cumulative, but the monthly earnings were the monthly earnings. So what you can see is that this kind of resembles the COVID curve in that it starts off in the beginning of December 2019 at just about approximately 0. And it varies between 0 and 0.4%, like I was saying on the other part, but then it's going way up to 1.4%, sort of following the infection curve. So the problem for us isn't where it's at right now at 1.28%. The problem is where it's going to be tomorrow. When you hear people on COVID talking about flattening the curve, is when is the curve going to flatten? And that ties back in a little bit to what Jeff was talking about with this court action. We really want to see the curve flatten. We want to, if it stays where it's at, we're probably okay. But when you can't disconnect people and you can't negotiate from position of strength, at some point it's going to get worse. And this table, Aaron, should be helpful. And the disconnect amount, I made the graph that I just showed you off of this using the discounts that Sandra gave and accumulating the cash collections by month. So.
So I guess, that gives us just a pretty high view on the rudimentary impact that we're seeing just relative to disconnects. I can tell you that we have staff and there's been expenses that were not contemplated. I have no idea what those are at this juncture. Sandra and I and Ed have discussed making sure that either way, whatever happens with this IURC case, we probably need to be kind of ferreting those out and tracking what's occurred during these last few months. So are there any other questions that I can answer related to the IURC action, the different options available to us, and or next steps?
So this is Aaron. I would like to make an observation, and this refers back to something you said that resonated with me. You said that we as Lebanon utilities are in a better position to make disconnect decisions and payment plan decisions than an overall approach by the IURC. And that resonated with me, that some discussions I've had with Ed and Sandra, and knowing my fellow board members that I think we can make good decisions for those families who are living from paycheck to paycheck. And if we go in and oppose phase one, we're also opposing a continuation of the disconnect. And that sort of bothers me on one level, but what Jeff said about us being able to make good local decisions on disconnect policies made me feel better. So that's the end of my comment.
Aaron, if I may, that's really where I sort of come off on this, and that's why we jumped on this to get it in front of the board, because your point is well taken. But what that means is that the broad brush of the IORC is going to be one that's the counterpoint to that are going to be tough decisions that you as the board need to tackle in the future. And we've started kind of outlining how we would address payment plan expansion and disconnect issues in the future and payment.
And hopefully also fees. So go ahead.
Yeah, and how to handle fee issues like that as well, for sure. And what kind of waivers we need to do, and then, you know, how you handle it. Do you break it out between residential and commercial? Do you, all of those issues, but those are tough, and they're fraught with, you know, feeling like you're benefiting one and to the detriment of another. So those are things that I think are going to be tough to tackle. And so, but I very much do believe that we're in a better spot to react, to make decisions on our own rather than be dictated to. Now that means that, you know, I think we're not going to likely see just an extinguishment of this disconnect order, but perhaps now is a good time to talk about it. You know, we'll have another board meeting between now and then. At some point, the plan was to come back to the board and say, all right, this is likely going to happen. Do we want to follow what the governor is saying, or do we want to ease back into this? Meaning, if the governor was silent and disconnects could occur in July, do we want to follow that path? So, you know, I may be speaking out of turn here a little bit, but my thought was that there would be some discussion about that on a board level, and how to roll back into those. So, if we're told it's different, then it's I think a horse of a different color than allowing us to react and adapt.
Hey, Jeff, it's Neil. So,
yes,
would you say, in your opinion, this is something that we should jump into in this phase one, or is it? I mean, just for your opinion.
Well, I do, Neil. There's the part that makes me a little. I can't predict. I don't know what's going to happen over the next month, over the coming months, and I don't know how to weigh the statement as you talk to others that are kind of lobbying for groups to get into this, including IMPA. As Ed touched on, we will put ourselves in a better position to request relief from the IURC if we're vocal now rather than silent. And so, you know, you kind of hear that, and it sounds like, well, you're stumping for us to join. But if we can cap the cost on this at $5,000 or so, which is the fee that the attorney quoted me, and if we can cap that or have some discussion about, hey, before you get beyond that, you got to let us know. I don't see a whole lot of downside other than that what we discussed in that cost. So that's where I kind of, you know, it's $5,000 is $5,000 in the scheme of what we're talking about in terms of losses and wanting to have a seat at the table and our voice heard. I don't see that as a lot of money towards that. So that was my rationale, and in my opinion, if my feet were put to the fire.
Yes, if we decided it's the wrong decision, we can opt out, correct?
Yeah, I mean, so what I want to be clear on is that phase one is going to happen very quickly here. That's all I'm asked for, I guess, recommending to the board or presenting to the board is that we jump into phase one. Phase two, I would think we'd need to come back and have a further discussion on what that means and what the expense would look like. So yes, technically, I think you could say, hey, we are withdrawing our participation, and we want to stop the expense. In the phase one, I think it's going to happen so quickly, and attorney fees have already been expended that we would be contributing to throwing into a pot. So, you know, I think likely that's not realistic. Phase two, certainly, and I would make that clear, that, you know, we're not sure what our appetite is for phase two. If the board.
Right, I agree, probably not realistic, but I guess my point was that if we for some reason did need to or want to, we could opt out. But if we don't opt in now, there's probably not going to be that option later since we missed that. But I could be wrong.
Correct. Correct. Yeah, this is there. You know, one thing too is, you know, legal expenses. Well, you jump in with 5,000 to begin with, and 2 months later, you know, another 5,000 will get you this much more benefit. And I just sort of want to go on record right now is that it'll have to be a heck of a case to get any more than 5,000 for my vote. Vote. Thank you.
I don't think you can make that statement.
Well, I watched the county government pursue this blank box case, and it eventually worked out in their favor. But they spent thousands and thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars more and more to go along. And I would not be willing to even start this if we thought we were going to have that sort of situation.
I think your comment is I hear you loud and clear, Aaron, relative to what our initial exposure would be. And if the board's pleasure is to jump in and allow us to move forward with selecting counsel, I can make sure that that's clear in the engagement letter.
And Jeff, that would only be for phase one, right?
Correct. And my intention then would be to reapproach the board before more attorney expenditures through outside counsel would occur for phase two.
Okay. Neil, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go with Jeff in his opinion. I'm going to lean on his expertise and without committing to anything long term or high dollar. We want to look out for ourselves and at least be voiced here in, you know, show our voice and support for something that's obviously important. And I think phase one at least does that. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Well, I agree, and I go along with what Jeff said.
All right. Any questions more for Jeff? This is kind of a complicated item here, but anything else for Jeff before it is an action item, so we'll have to have some motions here.
Jim, I would make a motion that the utilities should intervene in IURC case number 45380 as part of the municipally owned utility class as one only.
This is Bill, I second.
Motion made by Jim, seconded by Bill to intervene on the IURC cause number 45380. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thanks for that explanation, Jeff. I know it's a lot and we'll keep an eye on that, but Appreciate that.
So we have another motion too, don't we?
Yes, please.
Oh, we do have a second motion there if somebody wants to jump in on that one.
This is Bill. I move to retain outside counsel to represent Lebanon Utilities and Lebanon Utilities Service Board in IRC case number 45380 as to phase one and the discretion of General Manager Ed Baspel for direction from the attorney in amount not to exceed $5,000.
Second that, this is Jim.
A motion by Bill and a second by Jim. On the second part of this motion to retain outside counsel to represent Lebanon Utilities and the Utility Service Board in IURC cause number 45380. Any other discussion on this part of them? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, thank you again, everyone on that. Next item on the agenda looks like water tower maintenance. Our water department manager, Ryan Ottinger, is going to touch on that. Hey, Ryan.
Hi, thanks, everybody. Kind of wanted to go over some of the process that I started with today, and then I'm going to let Jeff kind of go into a little bit more of the legal side, and then I can follow up with some more technical information. This started out late 2019, mid 2019, where I started the process of getting prices for water tower painting and also water tower maintenance. When I first started, I kind of thought they were one and the same. Then I found out that that was not the case. That traditionally in the companies that I reached out to, the tank water tower service companies would not paint, and the painting companies were kind of working all over the United States. Obviously, they want to work 12 months a year, and in Indiana, it's not real conducive to paint in December and January outside water towers. So I kind of had some concern with that situation. Then I also learned that there were, as I did a little bit more research, there were techniques and protocols in the painting of the towers that the prices that I was receiving were not taking any of those issues into account. They were strictly for painting and just painting over the existing paint. Also into that aspect, I found out that our ladders need to be updated per OSHA standards. Not that they were out of compliance, but they either are or soon to be out of compliance. Our entry hatches need to be upgraded to be in OSHA compliance. So there was a litany of things that I would really thought, I was just gonna make a phone call and just get paint done and be finished with it, budget, be finished with it. So that's kind of when my scope expanded and my research expanded. It kind of landed me to where that's when I called Jeff with some concerns and just wanted to make sure I was going the right direction. So Jeff, is that kind of, you want to kind of take over and explain how we ended up where we are?
Yeah, so thanks, Ryan. As Ryan has recently brought me into this, what has initially occurred was, as he mentioned, he started down a maintenance RFP path and a painting RFP path. And what, as he mentioned, what he discovered was that those didn't always operate together. He got some weird pricing back that he was not comfortable with, some non-responsive requests to his proposal. And then I think it's fair to say, Ryan, on the painting side, got some proposals back that were not consistent with Indiana law. And so as he kind of expanded his search in the RFP process, what he did is he said, well, is there somebody that does all of this? And so what he found is that there's not a lot of companies out there, but he did receive data and pricing and a contract, as you'll see, from utility service company. And their kind of parent entity is Suez, is how we've been referring to them. So that's what's come of his process. It's been a very loose RFP process that he combined into one. And so what Ryan's request in front of you is are you comfortable with where he is in the process? Do you want us to go back to the drawing board? What are your thoughts? And if you're comfortable with it, we have and Aaron, thank you for the note, by the way. But we have on the correction on the statement of work, we've had even further changes to those statements of work relative to Suez. And let me explain as that's evolved. What Suez wanted to do was to sign us up for a 5-year program to handle all of the maintenance and painting for our two water tanks. And that was as I looked at it, it became a contract that auto-renewed for year to year to year, and then even extended beyond 5 years. And as has become my practice, I'm very uncomfortable with long-term agreements and very uncomfortable with anything that auto-renews. And that especially became true as some of this contract information came into me during the shutdown. So because our capital improvement process was slowed or halted, and then we don't know where we're going to be budget-wise year to year. So what we did is we took this 5-year agreement, which is what Suez needs internally, and what it really is, it's 5 one-year agreements because we need to actively approve each contract year. So what the thought process, the way this is supposed to work in theory, is the board would approve this 5-year contract. But those contracts would have to be renewed each year, and the statements of work and the budget amounts would be approved for year 1, say, and that would be set. But in year 2, if we look at it and they've gotten further into the maintenance, or there's been other projects that don't require us, or we shouldn't jump into painting that year or doing internal work on the tank, then we push that off to year 3. So what we've really tried to do here is to lock in our pricing with Suez, but have the ability to step out of this agreement, or we have to proactively approve it each year. So that's that's been a difficult process. Suez has come back and modified their statements of work. We did not expect that to happen, and that late this afternoon, I got that email with, hey, we've got a few other changes to this. And in their defense, this is not the type of agreement that they are used to, and so it's taken a while for them to get their heads around it. In retrospect, if I had it to do over, I would have just drafted the agreement and said, hey, you guys fit into this template rather than trying to adapt their document to what we want. So that's where we are. Ryan can talk about some of the technical elements of it. and for sure, and kind of the need, but we're looking for some direction. Are you comfortable where he is? To open this up more, what are your thoughts?
This is Aaron. Jeff, explain to me how, I guess you would say legally, we can accept the services of this one company without an RFP process?
Well, I think that Ryan has met the spirit of that. And if you look at this as a 1-year agreement, I think that that's, and I share the concern as to where we're at. He's not finding other companies that will, that are going to step in and provide this type of service.
Right, so the Indiana code allows for that flexibility?
We are, yes. This is a close call, Aaron, as to whether, because what he's done is blended 2 RFPs into one. I think he's met the intent of it. Has he met the technical elements? We're close. So
yes.
I don't mean to be aloof, Aaron. This has been such an odd process, and it's
that's why I'm asking questions about it. I've become pretty comfortable with it, but I wanted an explanation from our legal counsel. Go ahead.
Yeah, and so I guess if I'm pushed into a corner on this, and part of it is the cost part of it unraveled to me was more than I expected. I defer to Aaron where we are timing wise. We're in that, hey, here's how we kind of did it, and we blended 2 processes. I would defer to Ryan where we are timing wise. It would be cleaner to go back and open this up and expand it to and just we may only get 1 responder. We know a lot more than we did several months ago. We could put together a tighter request. It will slow down the process, but we may have been slowing down anyway, especially with edits to the contract coming in unexpectedly this afternoon. So it's kind of at the board's pleasure. I hesitate in fully signing off on the RFP process that's been used. But I hear the other side of it, that what Ryan's really done is blended 2 RFPs into one. So that's kind of where I'm at. If we're going to
okay, and we only found 1 company that satisfies our need, I guess you would say RFP needs.
Well, so yes, that was the only company that Ryan's that's located and responded. We did have several that responded on the paint element of it, and we had several responded on the maintenance element, most of which the pricing didn't quite meet Ryan's expectations. And jump in and correct me if I'm wrong here, Ryan, but also did not. There were elements of it that he was uncomfortable with that didn't match what he was seeing as he researched the industry and requirement that the specific requirements needed to provide the service. So kind of
right. Well, that's good. I've got one more question, Jeff. And this is for Ryan too. I did a little bit of online research, and this, Suez outfit seems to be, really reputable and experienced. I noticed in the contract that they have an emergency response provision. Where is there nearest location that they would respond to from this emergency? How would that work?
This is Ryan. I didn't get into the logistics on that. I'll be honest, and I can find out. No problem. But I do know that they do have emergency services, and they are located in central Indiana. I don't know if it's south side, north side, anything like that, but they do have crews in central Indiana. I know they're the parent company of Peerless Midwest, who does a lot of our well work and a lot of our contract work. Peerless has a place in Westfield, but I don't know exactly, but I do know that they have a central Indiana location if we were in need of a emergency service.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, this is Ed. Can I contribute to the discussion on what you're having? I don't think it's worth it to do a full clean RFP, even though this one, Jeff said, has some gray areas. And I'll tell you why. Just give you a little history of this type of service. Is that there aren't many people that do it because there's a sense in which they are playing the bank for you a little bit, in that they're letting you spread your costs out so that you're not paying this massive cost for paying a whole tank in 1 year. You're paying a little bit each year to keep everything maintained, because the cost of tank painting has skyrocketed over the last 10 or 15 years, having to do with OSHA enforcing safety standards that they didn't used to have, which costs money. It's a good thing, but they didn't have them. With lead paint removal, and I don't think you're ever going to get to a completely clean RFP because there are still disagreements in the industry about what is considered maintenance and what is considered capital when you get into tank painting. Some of the water companies I work for, they capitalize tank painting because it increases the life of the asset. But another rule of thumb that accountants use is they say, well, it's paint, so painting is maintenance because it's a guy painting. So I think that we're going to end up I think we're going to be a year later and end up in the same place if we wait to try and have a cleaner process, because they're part of the reason it's limited as to how many people do it is because it needs to be a big company, because they're spreading those costs out and having with people. So.
Yeah, and to kind of piggyback on that from Ed, for budget purposes, it makes it nice so you don't have a $250,000 hit 1 year and then zero budgeted next year because you thought you had everything taken care of, and then if you don't, if that paint starts to peel, or if they do maintenance and that tower starts to leak because of the maintenance, and you don't have any money budgeted that year, then you have or that company, that those painters are it starts to peel in December, or some issues in December, and that company is now in Arizona because of the climate working there. And I kind of want to go back a little bit. So I kind of feel like it sounds like I didn't do my due diligence on this, and it's actually the opposite. I spent many hours and months trying to check a lot of the boxes that I needed for AWWA. I did for the life of two of our major investments, which are our water towers, and to get the best situation for the utilities and the ratepayers. So as I was getting that, I'm asking companies about their guarantees. I'm asking company about follow-up services, and I'm not, that's what I was not seeing. And I was not comfortable with the scope of work without some sort of guarantee behind it. And entering into this agreement also does give us a guarantee on the work. So if this goes all the way down to if the light bulb on the top of the tower goes out, I make one call to Suez and it gets replaced. Whereas right now we pay our electric linemen hazard pay to suit up and latch on the ladder and go climb to the top of the tower just to replace the bulb. Jeff touched on something also about that I wasn't comfortable with the paint that was not, they were not following Indiana guidelines. It's actually federal EPA guidelines that was not being addressed and or being ignored by the prices I got for the tower painting. And that was a huge red flag to me also, that it was never brought up. But when I got pricing from Suez, they took paint chips from both towers and to a laboratory and sent me free of charge the report on that. Even if I used it with a different company, I had the report on what the base of that paint was. So, you know, all of that put together is kind of what led me to where I am today. So, like I said, there was definitely due diligence on my part, but there were so many red flags and so many boxes that I needed unchecked with each company, that the best fit, check all my boxes, is what led me to where I am today.
And this is
Hey, Ryan,
Bill. This is Bill. You know, I got a question. You know, there's so many moving parts on this thing that the way I look at it, it looks like it'd be better to open it up again for an RFP. But you know, it doesn't look. We're getting so far into this thing right now, and so many moving parts that I'm not comfortable with it.
Well, and this is Jeff. Let me just make a comment, Ryan. I want to make sure you're hearing me. I can attest only to a spec of the hours that Brian has put into this, trying to get the best deal for the utility. As I have learned, there's a lot of fly-by-night that happens in this, and reputation and references in the industry is very important. So Ryan, don't take my comments to mean that you have put a lot of time and effort into putting together a great deal for ratepayers and to protect it, two very important assets. My comment is more to the formality of the process in terms of trying to blend two kind of RFPs into one, and whether that's met some of the code process. So that's my only comment, Ryan, is to that formality, and so that's what, looking for direction from the board on how they want to handle that. That's where I was at. So not at all. But it's Neil. When Neil was ballpark when they were paying last?
Well, the painting was, I believe, about 12 to 15 years ago. The problem is they're both due, but what we're also running into is, per EWWA, they're supposed to be drained down and inspected every 5 years, and this is the every 3 to 5 years, and we are entering the 4th year.
Right.
That's happening. So, but they're also going to provide, obviously with their cost, mixers that go in both towers that are desperately needed, because what those will do is what you have when you put water in a water tower, if it goes into the bottom, the water at the top basically stays at the top because you don't have any turnover. It's almost like a pond that doesn't have a fountain in it. You notice the small ponds around town that collect algae on the top or growth on the top because they're stagnant. So these mixers that they would provide would, which also would be part of a pricing component that I would have to go through if all separate works, would greatly improve our water quality, especially in the wintertime when you're obviously not using as much water, but you need constant movement in those towers to keep the water, the top part from freezing up and causing the ice chunks to cause damage to the inside interior and the structure of your water tower. So, like I said, there are more, along with the ladders, the OSHA ladders, along with the OSHA access ports, along with the inspections, the painting, the light bulb, the mixers. So it's just, there's in all of that stuff, other than maybe the light bulb, I would be going out and spending and getting, trying to get pricing for. So, and would be difficult to budget for because you just don't know what needs to be done every year until your inspection. So, it would be, it would be hard to budget for. But if we have any surprises with an inspection, with this asset management is what I've been calling it. If the inspection shows something that needs to be done immediately, it can be done immediately based on the inspection. So there's just, you just never know what's going on inside a water tower until you have a camera in there, or until you have a crew in there. So
I guess my point is, even if we trust Suez, and we're due for some of this maintenance, maybe close to overdue, then putting this off even a year, we're just going to be looking at the same thing again. And, the ability that what Jeff's done to fix this contract, where we're essentially looking at it on a year-to-year basis, might be a good idea to go with this. If Suez is good and they're one of the few who do this and we're able to stretch out the cost, it'd be a little different if we had just done some maintenance and we were looking for someone new. But that's just my thought on it.
And Neil, I can kind of weigh in on that also. If for some reason we say, next year, if we want to hold off on some stuff and just have, let's say we don't want to paint the towers this year, take one of them offline. We just want to do the OSHA upgrades and the mixers and stuff like that. Not the major stuff, just so we get an idea of what a contract with them and what their service is. That's all. It's all pretty fluid. So we could. But what would happen is if we do, and I don't want to push it this meeting necessarily, but if we do lock in pricing for 2020, that's for the next 5 years. So we all know the cost of paint is not going to go down in 2021. The cost of paint is going to go up at a minimum 5, 6, 7%. But if we lock that in, even if we don't paint until 2021, we are locking in the price of that paint now, as opposed to pushing this all off a year and then locking in. Even if we don't go with Suez in 2021, we would be paying more for that process if we start all over in 2021. Everything, nothing, it seems like in this industry gets cheaper. Everything costs more money every year. So
Hey, Ryan, this is Bill. I got a question for you. If we open this up again for an RFP, how long, what kind of time frame are you talking about?
Whatever would meet the legal requirement. If we open it up again, I don't know. Jeff would have to weigh in on that. And then we would just have to go through the process. I'm not sure what those numbers would look like. Jeff, what would we need for this RFP to be open and go through that process? Is there a certain amount of days? Or, I would have to just, if we advertise, I don't know if we do our due diligence and just reach out to every company that I can think of that would do one or the other and see if they would be able to put a price in to do both. But when I went through this process, once I found an asset management, I also reached out to the city of Danville, the city of Brownsburg. I reached out to some people that I know in the industry that don't have a lot of rural water, Indiana. I reached out to some of the instructor or some of the workers, and could not come up with any other recommendations than Suez as far as meeting all my requirements. So
so you're saying that this is the best we can come up with. So everybody seems to think it's good to go, or what?
This is Aaron. I'd like to share why I'm good to go. And Brian may remember this, but when I saw the budget increases this year for this work, I was in Sandra Morgan's office and called Ryan up on the phone, and I must have asked him 30 questions about why this large budget amount is being assigned to something that has been received almost no budget dollars in years and years before. And he did a great job of explaining the technical aspects of it to me about how we had deficiencies and how, particularly with the mixers, and how we haven't been keeping up with industry standard painting schedules and so forth. And you remember that those 30 questions, Brian? You did such a great job of answering it that I became very comfortable and supportive of the significant budget increases. And I likewise have confidence that you have researched thoroughly the availability of suitable people to get the work done. And so with the background of effort I've made into understanding it and the good job that Ryan did of explaining it to me, I've got a great deal of comfort.
Neil, what do you think?
Well, I'll just piggyback a little what Aaron said. He researched it, and this is not something that's going to go away. We're going to have to face it at some point, and I just hate to, if you open this up again to RFPs, you're going to get a lot of unqualified people. It's going to take more time, and I'm even okay tabling it if somebody else wants to discuss it further, but it sounds like it's becoming a little overdue. And I also like, and my next question is going to be, have we reached out to any of the utilities and asked who they use? And Suez has come up a couple times, it sounds like. So, this isn't really, to me, an elective thing. We got to do something, and we'll be facing it again in 12 months if we put it off now. So that's just my opinion. I would do for it.
All right.
Neil, if I could point out, Linda did. So if we needed to, I don't want to pressure or rush anything. I want everybody to be happy with it.
I can put you on speaker and try that way if you want.
Send you an email all of their references, and also a map of all the asset management agreements that they have in the state of Indiana. That is in Board Bookit. That is on Board Bookit. So there is all their references. If anyone needed to call and double check and kind of see, get other utilities' thoughts. And one thing I do want to talk about, a couple things I want to go back to real quick. Aaron, the gentleman from Suez is actually watching our meeting in case I had any questions. Illinois is where their emergency services company is out of. So, they're within a couple hours of an emergency. I wanted to make sure that was accurate. And then also, all their work is guaranteed. So all the risk as far as any work done is guaranteed. And that is one thing that I could not get with any of the, some of the tank service companies did guarantee their inspections. But when it came to painting, I could not get any type of guarantee other than a 30, 90-day warranty on the paint or on the work, but not on both. So that is also, I think, for the ratepayers and for the utility, a huge draw to me was the guarantee that at any point in time, if any of their work is not up to our standards, they will come back in and fix it on Suez, not on the utilities.
Hey, this is Ed. I want to contribute and kind of shout out Ryan and the job he's done on this, because this big picture, holistically, this is asset management, and this is going to save us money in the long run, because you're painting the tank before it gets so dilapidated that you need to knock it down and build a new tank. The the easiest thing for people to do, and what many utilities do, is they will not do any tank maintenance until they have a leak in the tank or a structural problem or something falls in. And then it's very easy to justify getting the money to paint it and fix it then, because it's broken and it needs fixed. But being proactive like this is where the industry's going. It saves money, and it's and as you're seeing, it's not easy. It's a very difficult process. There's all sorts of bells and whistles, and it's a whole lot easier for Ryan to come say this water main broke, I need it fixed, than it is to say I'm trying to prevent this water main from breaking. But there's science behind it, and I think this is a good thing. And I don't know that it's going to change any if we work the RFP process again.
Okay, I agree with that. Anybody else have questions for Ryan or opinions? Okay, if not, we'll, it's an action item, we'll entertain some motion.
Did you want me to, I'm so sorry, did you want me to, I have a request for each tower is its own separate contract. Do you want me to do the request and then vote on each one? Is that how that needs to go?
I think they suggested, don't you think they suggested the motion is satisfactory all in one?
This is Jeff. I got kicked out for a little bit. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, great. So yes, the suggested motion I am comfortable with. However, please know that there's likely some additional tweaking to the contract or the SOWs that, as I mentioned earlier, so that's been a change to the motion that's occurred today. So if I could ask that you add, subject to Ed Baskel's approval of any contractual changes.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. If you're comfortable with the motion, and then I am.
So
now, these additional contract changes, are how significant are they?
So as I've looked at them, they are not changing any pricing, but what they're doing is I would call them non-substantive, but there are edits that will need to be worked through. It's not like they're typos. So part of this is, Suez wants to maintain a 5-year agreement, and they're wanting to continue to include some of the beyond pricing in it. So those are some of the edits that we'll need to work through. I guess what I would suggest is that, I don't know where those are going to quite take us. If they would become substantive, my commitment to the board, and I would suggest that, Ed, if we get into a situation where we're starting to change the spirit of the agreement, then I would bring it back to the board.
Okay, anybody else have any questions or comments on this item?
Just make sure you get these changes done in 2 weeks.
Council on the other side has been responsive. That would be my hope. I will have the edits out this week to her, and probably the next step is just I'll send her my changes and then pick up the phone.
Do anybody else want to entertain the table until that's finalized? Is that what you're getting at here?
This is Bill. I think we ought to table this thing. Like I said before, there's too many moving parts, and now we've added something else. So I would move to table it.
Do you intend to table it to a date certain, Bill?
I would table it to the next meeting.
And, Ryan, if we do table it to the next meeting, will that give you any heartburn?
No, I mean, I want everybody to be comfortable. So if that's what it takes, I mean, what, is there something I need to do, Jeff? I guess you and I can talk after this. What do I need to do within that 2 weeks, or is that just strictly, from a legal standpoint? I mean, I just want everybody to be comfortable, so if you know, if we need to wait 2 more weeks, we need to wait 2 more weeks.
With that input, I second Bill's motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Bill and a second by Eric to table, the water tower item for 2 weeks. Any other questions or discussion before we vote on that? All right, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thanks, Ryan, for that. And Jeff, I think that if the contract is up, then that makes sense. So we'll go that route.
Okay.
Okay, next item on the agenda is Utility Service Board pension, One America update information item, and Jeff Jacob will address that for us.
Yeah, and it's, Sandra, are you still on?
No, Sandra had to go off.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm. So Sandra was going to carry the lion's share of this. It's just a brief update. We have, from a transition standpoint, we have transitioned from principal to One America, and we're what's called a moratorium phase, where the funds have been kind of locked down for a period of time while that transition over occurs. And I don't have a date certain, but I believe it's within the next, I believe by the 15th of June, everything will be finalized and transitioned over, and we will be fully up and running under One America's umbrella. So that I know that if Sandra were here, and just to comment, there has been a lot that's gone into this on her end and continues to go into it. And it's been a pretty big undertaking on her part, and she's done a nice job with it. That having been said, I wish I had the exact date certain, but I believe it's June 15th that we will be, the transition will be finalized and we'll be up and running.
Okay, and I'm sure Sandra would be glad to answer anybody has additional questions. She could answer more of those by email or whenever she's available. So. Anybody else have any questions on the pension transfer for Jeff? All right, we'll jump to the next item, which is approval of the claims. These are claims dated June 3rd, 2020, in the amount of $407,000 or $407,283.51. Everyone had a chance to review the claims.
Did we not receive a claim from electricity?
I think they were out on board budget, is where I viewed them. Is that right?
The claims are yes, in board bucket. They're there for viewing. They were put on today. The next action item will retroactively prove the others.
So we have, claims to approve.
I move to approve the claims dated June 3, 2020 for $407,283.51.
Anybody second that?
I'll second it. It's Jim.
Motion made by Aaron, seconded by Jim to approve the claims dated June 3rd, 2020 in the amount of $407,283.51. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the next item is a retroactive approval of some past claims. The claims were reviewed and we just need to officially approve them now in the public forum.
I would move we retroactively approve the claims dated May 6, 2020 for $1,056,112.05 and May 20th, 2020 for $1,741,938 pursuant to Indiana Code 31-1-4-16.
This is Bill, I second.
Okay, motion made by Jim and seconded by Bill to approve the retroactive claims from May 20th, 2020 and May 6th, 2020. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, that carries as well. The next item is other business for the board. Ed, do you have anything else? I know you covered some stuff earlier. Does anybody have anything for this item?
Yes, I have a short slideshow. If you guys, I want to cover a few things. Shout outs for employees and some financial stuff. I'm glad we got to say the pledge again. But first off, I'd like to say that we at Lebanon Utilities, we're the channel in uncertain times, hard times. It kind of reminds me of the prayer of St. Francis, where we say, Lord, make me a channel of your peace. Where there is desperation, let me bring hope. We at Lebanon Utilities, we channel water, wastewater, electricity, and data through many, many instruments and strive to be channels of harmony and peace throughout our community. Where there's darkness, we bring light. Where there's risk of infection, clean, purifying water and sanitation. Where there's isolation, a data connection. And by taking care of our community, who are our friends and our neighbors, we strive to bring peace, hope, and unity. So I want to take this opportunity to thank the channels of peace and harmony that are our Lebanon Utilities employees, keeping Lebanon's people and citizens going. It isn't just a job, it's a calling. And I think our whole staff has done a tremendous job going through this crisis, and they can continue to do so. And if you're looking at YouTube, the picture on your screen, it looks a little scary. It looks a little bit like something out of a Frankenstein movie. But that April 27th, we had a porcelain cutout go bad in the Uptown Alley east of the square, and you can see the Radio Mom sign to give you orientation on it. And that tripped out the whole 1273 circuit, about 183 people. And the guys had to replace the pole, splice the primary back together. They did a tremendous job getting the power back in less than 3 hours. So shout out to the electric crew on that. This isn't our crew, but this is a project that Ryan Ottinger and John Leitner put together for us on Hendricks Drive, where we this whole project's done already. We had a lot of discussion on it at the board about it stopping overflows, which we do believe it's already stopped some overflows. We're collecting data, but here's a picture of some of the ongoing work. But probably the most important thing to the board is this last picture is there's it seeded and strawed. It's done already. After all it's just blowing and going is the phrase we use in construction. They were blowing and going. They just got this thing done, and kudos to our contractor and to BFNS and Ryan for bird dogging this and getting it done. This next picture, this is an aerial of the wastewater plant from 2018. And this is an aerial today. Notice the grass isn't there because of all the construction, but we've also added, I got another picture here where it's labeled. We added UV and a clarifier, added grit removal. We've got the anoxic zone and PO4 removal chamber. And again, it's another project that went extremely well. They haven't signed the final sign-offs on it yet, but it's just about done, and increased the capacity of our plant. So kudos to our contractor and our staff for coordinating with them, getting this thing done. So thanks again, Ryan, and your staff. I covered some financial details earlier, but I had a report I was wanting to do probably once a month regularly. Let me show you this slide and give you a chance to take it in and then point out a few things. This is an excerpt from the 35-page report that you guys get monthly on our finances. What I'm trying to do is highlight things, and I've added a section, or had Sandra do the heavy lifting, and her staff, kudos to her, on what I call managed by exception, where I'm comparing the year-to-date April 2020, year-to-date 2019, and the same with the budget. So from a managerial perspective, what you're looking for is what the variance is, so you know what to drill down on where we may or may not have a problem. And you can see if towards the bottom of the slide, it's a negative 1.49% variance from 2019, negative 6% from budget. So we're down on revenues, as would be expected with the COVID. But this next is just a condensed version of our expenses. And you can see that the expenses are actually down further than, they're down 11%. So we're not in too bad a shape financially despite the crisis on electric. I'll go a little faster. There's water. You have minus 4.6% from budget on revenues, minus 7% on total expenses. So again, same situation there. Wastewater, it's minus 3% on revenues, minus 9% on expenses. Am I going too fast, Neil? Am I doing okay? Long time?
Doing great.
Okay. Telecommunications, this is our smallest utility, but they're up. They've actually been growing because they've been trying to help people stay connected and get data as they work from home. So we've got 73 new customers out of about 1,000 customers. So that's a 7% growth rate in 2 months. So I don't expect that to continue, but if that were to continue, that would be a 44% annual growth rate, which would be pretty awesome. But see, their expenses are even down on that. So they've been spending all their time doing service calls, putting in new customers. So conclusions, we're still in good financial shape, and we can do some limited capital work that we, as Bill Stoner had mentioned earlier, that we're still limiting capital work, but there is some work we can do when it comes to in terms of planning and compliance. We're not undertaking major new projects that have to do with growth, but we do want to plan future projects, especially with the new world we live in, as to how things are going to be affected. As I guess I already covered, business is booming for telecom. Our biggest financial concern is, you've heard a lot about flattening the curve for COVID. We want to flatten the curve for collections. We want to see people be able to start pay their bills, the ones that are having trouble. Hopefully people get back to work. And I think that I already covered also how the IURC's case by the IOUs or the investor-owned utilities could undermine our financial future if we're not careful. That's why I was recommending that we participate in this rate case. So looking at the laid out, on these slides I've already showed you. So I hope I didn't go too fast. Is there any questions on anything I presented, or anything that any other utility business?
Good presentation.
Well, thank you, Mr. Smith. Appreciate it.
Yep, good job, Ed. Anybody else have anything for the board? And I'll also ask at the same time, do we have any public chime in there, Ed, either message or emails or anything from the public?
I haven't got anything on the live chat, and we advertised on the meeting the email address, which I think is comments@lebanonutilities.com, that automatically forwards to me, and I haven't got any emails there yet either. I can also see online how many people are logged in, and it's really just us on our team. There's just only 2 people logged in on chat. So unfortunately with COVID, even though we're doing our best to reach out to the public, our meetings haven't been very well attended by the public. So But they are recorded on YouTube, and we will respond to any public requests when we have them.
I do have, following up on that, I do have a comment, Neil, if I may, just as an updated piece of information that you should all be aware of. If you recall, I believe about this time last year, or July last year, there was a house fire in Lebanon on Finley Drive, and it was an electrical related fire. If you recall, there was also a firefighter that was injured in that. And before I go any further, I want to very much limit comment on this and not take any questions, but I simply wanted to update you that there has been a suit filed against the City of Lebanon Utilities related to that loss. And the lawsuit was filed by Erie Insurance Company on behalf of the property owner against the City of Lebanon. And Travelers Insurance, at the time of the loss, or shortly thereafter, was put on notice of a potential claim, and they have been involved in the situation. The suit has been formally filed, and there is pending litigation that Travelers Insurance is defending our interests in.
Okay, thanks for the information, Jeff. Keep us updated on that, I'm sure. Anybody else have anything for the good of the order? Okay, it looks like our next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, June 17th at 5 p.m. I'm sure we will know before then if we are ready to get back to a traditional meeting format or if we'll still be distancing. So that's yet to come. But thanks everybody. I know this is a long meeting. We have a lot of stuff, important stuff to cover, and I know it takes a lot of time. So appreciate everybody's input and research and time, and it's a lot, but I think everybody's doing a great job. So anybody else have anything before we adjourn?
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Got a second on that? I think we've been here long enough. Can I get a second on that?
This is Aaron. I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Bill or Jim, are you guys still on the line?
Neil, they may have left. I would suggest can you make the motion? Or
Yeah, I'll make it if they had to drop off. I know it's long. So I'll second the motion to adjourn. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you, everyone, and talk to you.